I think about the work outside of the studio actually when everyday life. I walk in the street or I take the subway and I go places and I look at people and I look at the things around me, and that really feeds ideas into me. Often actually I get my ideas on the way back from the studio back home, even though it's a very short walk. That's when I'm still like having so many thoughts being stirred in my head, and then I'm bouncing from one idea to the other. When I go to a studio, it's rare that I sit and I really sketch a lot in the studio. Sometimes there are moments where I do that, but usually I'm sketching the ideas I had outside of the studio or I sketched at home. I sketch things very quickly, and then I quickly know what's working in my head or not. And so I'd sketch, and then I use tracing paper to work on the composition, you know, for a while. For that one, then I finally put it on a transparent layer like this that I project with the old-fashioned projector. That's when I started painting. And this one went through so many iteration of the hat went through so much change. It wasn't working, and first I wanted to do like a simple face in the shadow with skin. But the scale, as soon as you change scales, things don't work the same way. And then finally, in the center, I covered the face with hair. I just thought it worked better. It simplified everything. When I get to the point where it's really more advanced, that's when I use Photoshop. So I tried all kind of backgrounds with this painting. But I finally found like a padded wall, like in a mental institution, and I just traced the lines, but then I just paint over myself. So that one is almost close to finish now, I think. But that could change still. So my art is informed by other art movements, but pretty much everything is incorporated. I mean, my life is my art. There's myself, you know, my art is really linked also to my life, personal events. It's very much autobiographic in a way, in other ways, but in a way it's very autobiographic. But I wanted to be an illustrator when I was a teenager. Always been interested in comic books, especially graphic novels. There's a big culture of graphic novels in France. And then in movies, you know, early on, like maybe 5 years ago when I started this series of work, it was really inspired by Hitchcock, and is working with a lot of very archetypal female figures that I was fascinated with. But the cropping it has around the characters, the subjects, the shadows are elongated, very much inspired me. You know, I went to Japan, so ukiyo-e prints, and also I'm half Vietnamese, so I think I was raised a bit with a different kind of sensibility to image making, the way the Eastern country built an image, you know, as the composition is very different, the idea of space, the subject. I was in residency in Japan, in Tokyo, for 2 months. And that's why it's always great to change the environment, because then you get so much, you can see the world with new eyes. You're studying them with the idea in mind that you're going to do something out of it. There's like always this idea of transformation. So there are moments where I try not to be in my routine. I try to stay a bit more aware when I know I need this more input. That's where I'm going to pay attention to what's going on, look at tiny details that are going to trigger ideas and association. From one association, I'm thinking of something else. And then finally, I'm thinking of an idea that kind of excites me. And very quick, I'm going to just write it. You know, I'm going to write 2 words that refer to it. Or I'm just going to do a very crude little sketch. And then I'm coming back to the studio and like taking these 2 words and then expanding on them. When there's no pressure of time, it definitely, recently I feel like I've been a little slower, and I feel like I could be working and tweaking the same thing over and over, and I have to give myself boundaries where it's like, don't touch it anymore, it's fine. But in general, when I really have a timeline, it has to reach a certain point. I know the point I'm looking for. I know when it's like, and it's really strange. It's like, you know it when, for the longest time, it's not there. You know it's not there, and suddenly you're there. You're like just adding these different little marks, and they're creating. It's like almost like it's the surface, the lines, everything is popping in a way, and I know that's there because it's popping. It's doing that thing, and so it has never been hard. Like that's why I work with images, because working with more in an abstract way is very anxiety-inducing, because I don't know where to stop. I don't know where to stop. When it's an image, I know what I had in my head. But no, yeah, finishing. The only thing with my art is I really like to take my time. I really do not enjoy being pressured like most artists, I'm sure. Although some people work better on timeline, you know, with a deadline in mind. I don't, because I like to let them kind of macerate. Often I'll put them on break, you know, I'll give them break and I'll go back to it, and then it's going to be obvious what I need to do. Like on that one, I started in June and I only finished it in January or December. Because I had Japan and moving studios, but also I was so happy that I gave it time, because the figures appeared at the very end. I had no idea I was going to do those, and they only could happen because I gave this painting all the time it needed. And I think the figures are really important in the background. They really changed for me the meaning of that painting, and they allowed me to surprise myself a little bit. So time is key, yeah.